now your calls on scrapping the triple lock pension promise. Do you think that would be a fair thing to do? Or do you think it's right that pensions are protected in this way? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this, especially if you are a pensioner. We're asking the question, of course, after it was revealed that the newly appointed pensions minister has previously called for the triple lock to be scrapped and for the entire pensions process to be reformed. Labour MP Torsten Bell was promoted into the role on Tuesday, just 6 months after winning a seat in Parliament. He does have a history of speaking out against the current system. Not only would he ideally like to replace the triple lock, which guarantees that the state pension will rise by either inflation, wage growth or a 2.5% minimum, whichever is the highest, but he also previously said that he would want pension pots to be included in taxable earnings. The government says they're completely committed to honouring the triple lock on pensions, but do you think they should consider scrapping it? Nelufar, where do you stand on pensions? A long time coming for you.
Yes, well, not that long, but I don't think this is a good idea in the slightest. I think this is coming left of field. It's not in the manifesto whatsoever. This is definitely going to hit a lot of older Labour voters as a bit of a shock. The triple lock is there for one simple reason, because we know that the oldest in our society can be the most vulnerable and they can be the least likely to ask for help. They can suffer from loneliness at a higher rate. And one of the things about the triple lock is it allows people to have autonomy in their own old age. That the reason that it is protected in this way is so that they don't have to fall into poverty and therefore become, the responsibility of the state. I don't disagree that the system might be outdated. I mean, it's decades old, well, a decade and a bit old, actually. I'm not saying that that's the issue, but what I'm saying is I don't trust this government or any other government to get it right first time. And the toll it will take, the effects it will have on the elderly or those who receive pensions is going to be huge. Where is this coming from? Why is this necessary now? Because of ideological reasons? I'm just worried about the people that will fall through the net.
All right, so let me ask you about when the triple lock pension promise started and why, and what you think would be the ramifications if it were to be scrapped.
Yeah, so the Conservatives brought it in to reassure elderly people that their pension would keep up with the basics of their cost of living. And the clue is in the 2.5%. At that time, inflation was pretty consistently low, had been for a long, long time, and a lot of other things took their cue from that. When inflation went into double digits because of war in Europe and the global sort of energy crisis, there wasn't an extra 10% for everybody else in the UK, but the triple lock committed, the government at the time, I was there, committed to give a huge amount of extra money to pensioners, which stopped us being able, for instance, to give extra money to the doctors and nurses who'd just been heroically through 2 years of a global pandemic. So what it does is create a sort of ring-fenced massive pool of cash these days that is not based on need, it's based on age. And those two things may coincide. There are some poor pensioners, of course there are, but there are poor young people and there are poor people in midlife and there are defence spending needs and there's infrastructure spending needs. There's a whole load of other things that cannot compete for that pot of money. And I think that's wrong.
Very often, though, when we talk about means testing anything, any payment of any kind, no matter how deserved or justified, we hear that the cost of means testing itself is so prohibitive, it's really not worth it. Might as well give the same amount to everybody because it's cheaper in the long run to do it that way. Could that be said of the triple pension promise?
Well, means testing, you do have a point there. Often, the bureaucracy is worse than the sort of blanket sort of handout. But what the triple lock does is that amount of money handed out goes up and up and up and up and up. And it's not going up for everybody else. Defence spending doesn't go up automatically by a triple lock. Neither does education spending by a triple lock. Health, generally, whoever's in power has done.
I mean, having said all of this, we've already spoken to a pensioner on the programme this morning who said that he's got the heating off at the moment because it's too expensive to put the heating on. So when we talk about huge amounts of money, although en masse it's huge, for the individual pensioner, I think people are going to ring and tell us that they're struggling.
But do you know what I'd like to see is a government that actually invests to avoid the next cost of living crisis. And one of the things that Boris Johnson tried to do was greenlight 8 nuclear power stations. So by the end of this decade, we would have cheaper, more reliable energy. Those plans have been scrapped. And what we always get is a bit more jam today, which means there's not going to be a loaf of bread in 10 years' time.
I mean, what I should say is that what we're really talking about would be a £9 increase next year. That's what we're talking about, £9. So let's bring in Roger in West Sussex. Hello, Roger. Thanks for calling. Morning.
Good morning.
So do you think we should remain committed to the triple lock pension promise, or is this time to think of something else?
I think we should remain committed to the general idea of a triple lock. It's not as generous as it sounds. The word triple seems to imply gold-plated and all that. But in fact, the 2.5% or the inflation or earnings rises are all at about the same level at the moment. To remind you why the triple lock was brought in the first place, I don't quite agree with Ditto. It was brought in at a time when inflation was fairly low, and so pensioners weren't getting much of a rise each year.
Yes.
But earnings were going through the roof, and so pensioners weren't sharing in the wealth that other people were enjoying. That's why we have the triple lock. I think there's a problem with it in the fact that it's done on a year-by-year basis. So 1 year's inflation rise piggybacks on last year's earnings rise and so on. And I think the system could be tweaked a little bit by setting a base year, and then you say in all the years since that base year.
Yeah, I mean, next year we'd be talking about 4.1%, Roger.
Yeah, I think the problem is that you switch backwards and forwards. Yeah. And if you just say, what would the pension be this year from that base year if it had risen in line with inflation, if it had risen in line with earnings, and take the better of those two. Because at the moment, by piggybacking one from another, I've done the calculations. The pensions now, from when the triple lock was brought in, have risen more than inflation and more than in earnings.
I mean, that's an excellent point, Guto, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was the original safeguard. But at the moment, we're talking about vast sums of money. It's not that much more per pensioner. But the accumulation of £9 for every pensioner means an awful lot of money coming out of a pot that could be, for instance, going to the defence budget or into schools, or to help students who've got crippling debts at the moment. But nobody
have to look at the return on investment, specifically when it comes to the pensions. Okay, so we know that the elderly are more likely to fall sick. We know that they're more likely to use the NHS. We know they're more likely to be in need of care. So every pound we invest in allowing them to look after themselves, be autonomous, have a thriving life, in the end, I believe, saves us money, because they're not going to if an old person falls or has a cough or a cold, the ramifications of that are far worse than a 21-year-old. That has to be taken into consideration.
But a 21-year-old, if economically active, which a lot of them are not at the moment, record numbers, generate the wealth that create the tax base that allow us enough money to look after people. So at both ends of the spectrum
in their old age. We're talking about £200 at a maximum for the state pension.
So what you need highly motivated, dynamic young people who are going to generate the wealth, which would make it a breeze.
They're different problems. They're different problems. They are linked, but they're different problems. Looking after the elderly shouldn't have to.
Ray's on the line in Nottingham. Hello, Ray. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. What do you make of this? Do you think we should stay true to the promise, the triple lock pension, or not?
Well, can I just speak about your two panel members there? Neither of them are living on £12,000 to £14,000 a year, and I'll correct all three of you. The state pension is going up £7 a week.
Right.
The £9 a week is for a small number of pensioners dependent on their birth date.
All right, thank you for that.
Most pensioners will get £7 a week.
Okay.
Now, £7 a week. I'm a 78-year-old pensioner.
Yes.
Basically, the increase of £360 a year, I'm out of pocket. I'm losing £200 on winter fuel, £150 on projected increase in electricity charges, small amount, about £1.40 in income tax. The water rates are going up, everything's going up. And the present scheme is not fit for purpose. 2.5% guarantee on next to nothing is nothing. It should be replaced, but by a fixed amount. Calculate what the costs are for a pensioner annually and give us that plus a little bit of something. We're paid an existence wage, not a living wage.
Ray, how much more money do you think would make the difference to your weekly life and the way you can live your life, whether it's a life that you can enjoy and a life that you can relish, or a life where you're just subsisting and getting by? Realistically, how much more money do you think you would want or need?
Very little, £4 or £5 a week.
Would that make the difference?
Yes. In fact, if they gave us the £9 instead of the £7,
Yes.
I would be almost level.
Gosh.
With the following year's expenditure.
All right, let me ask Guto. Ray, let me just ask Guto about this, because, you know, obviously en masse, thinking of all pensions and all pensioners, it's a voluminous amount of money. Nobody can say it's not. But when you hear Ray and you say, how much would you need to raise your life from just getting by to being able to enjoy it a bit, and he says £4 or £5 a week, that would make all the difference, then you just think, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's tragic, but the tragedy is that when you have a blanket system that awards a millionaire living in a house whose mortgage they've long paid for the same amount as Ray, you are wasting a lot of money that would go a lot further for Ray than it is for the millionaire in a house that they own, and that's the problem.
Two things. Number one, means testing the pension and keeping the triple lock, two separate issues. I agree with you. They should be means tested. Number two, when a young person, as you mentioned, this 21-year-old, goes through a tough time, when the country suffers inflation, war, fuel prices and everything, they at least have access to a way of earning themselves out of that problem. Pensioners do not. They can't earn themselves out of the fact that we are fighting wars, we are dealing with a difficult political and economic climate. So that has to be taken into the consideration. They don't have any other way of earning themselves out of this. And Ray, what a poignant, moving way of you to present your case. And I really, really hope that things change for the better for you.
Right, thank you. Let's go to Allison on the line in Devon. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Vanessa. Hello, panel.
Hello.
Hi.
So the triple lock pension promise, the question is, should we stick with it or not?
No, absolutely not. I don't agree, and I know I'm going to upset a lot of pensioners by saying this, but I don't agree that we should just be handing out money to anybody, including pensioners, that don't need it.
Right.
So I don't understand why we still have free bus passes, free prescriptions. We want to invest in this country. The economy is in absolutely dire straits. We know that. The NHS needs support. Money has to come from somewhere. So for me, and I am 60, so I appreciate I am getting free prescriptions when I need them, but I don't want to have free prescriptions. I'd happily give that up.
Really?
I think means testing is the way forward, I'm afraid.
And Alison, they always say it's so expensive. You know, very often people bring up means testing with all kinds of things, child benefit and everything else. And then we're always told it's so pricey to do it. This is the thing.
I think it should be means testing across the board. I don't know why we give child benefit to people that don't need it.
We did bring in means testing.
It is means testing, and we brought it in for disability allowance and all sorts of other things, and people are dying. So there's a lot of reasons, because when you get it wrong, the consequences are catastrophic. That means testing, often done by external companies and corporations with different priorities. You know, they might have a situation where the fewer people that get allocated the benefit, the more they make. So there's lots of reasons why we don't have means testing in certain things, but child benefit is means tested.
All right, let's go to Carol in Norwich. Hello, Carol.
Hello.
Morning. What do you think about the triple lock pension?
Well, I'm just so upset.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's happening? You're worried about it?
I'm sorry. This Allison, she obviously is a lady of means. My husband and I worked hard all our lives.
Yes.
We are worn up. We worked on a farm. We never received a very good wage all our lives.
Uh-huh.
We never asked for a penny from nobody. And we've now got to this stage, and it feels like everybody wants to just bump us off, get rid of us, don't give us anything.
Oh, I don't think that's Right, Carol, I know you're very upset, but nobody's saying that you shouldn't have anything. It's a question of, whether they stick to the triple lock pension plan or whether they might. But if they brought in means testing, my darling, I don't think that you would be the people that would have your pension.
Yes, but this is the problem. The people who can get the winter fuel allowance through getting the I can't remember what it's called, the benefit. My husband and I are just over that, just a few pounds over that.
Pension credit, yes.
Yeah, pension credit, that's the word.
Yeah.
And so what are we supposed to do? If we come to this means testing business, what they're talking about, we're not going to fit in, are we? So what are we supposed to do? Just starve to death? We've used what little savings we had. We've used. It's all gone.
Carol, I think I can see why you would feel worried and threatened, but I think if you take a very deep breath and just calm down a little bit, nobody's gunning for you and your pension. Nobody wants to see you, God forbid, a million times starve to death. That's not it at all. And if you haven't got any savings and you haven't been a wealthy person all your life, they wouldn't come for you and your pension, even if it were decided to means test pensions, which it hasn't been. I just want to make sure that Carol isn't feeling threatened and sad and worried and anxious, because I don't think you need to be feeling like that right now. Honestly, Carol, I don't think that's on the cards for you at all, right, Guto?
No. Ask the gentleman on the panel.
I'm asking him,
if he would like to live on £771 a month, and with all the amount that's going up with the bills, with the water rates and the heating, etc., etc. Just ask him, when he gets to my age, and he's worked hard all his life, how he would feel when
Carol, let's ask him, because we're running out of time on this one. Guto, how would you feel if you had to live on that amount?
My mum actually is 89, so it's not that I don't know elderly people, but the reality is nobody's going to ditch the pension lock. Labour are not going to do it because they promised it for a term. The Conservatives brought it in. They will stand by it. So it's not going to happen. But Torsten Bell is interested. He's a thoughtful guy. He studied this thing in depth. He thinks that you could free more money so Carol gets more money and people like my mum get less.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. And I hope that you can calm down and enjoy your weekend and relax. It's certainly not happening and it's not on the cards.